Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, it's starting to look pretty crazy out here, man. I don't know about you guys, but I've been hearing a lot about the Chargers division in the AFC West this season. A lot of talk about it becoming a race for the top of the division. A lot of teams all of a sudden sprouting out of nowhere, challenging the Chiefs for that number one spot. Will the Chiefs remain the number one team, the former Super Bowl champs? I would argue probably the best team in the division right now. Or will a dark horse team like the Raiders, Broncos, and most certainly the Chargers usurp them this season? It's going to be a tough one, man. I think the biggest reason everybody's talking about the AFC West is probably this legendary roster of head coaches we've got all of a sudden. Yeah, we don't love to say, the other hirings have been great, but they have been. Sean Payton, a great hiring for Denver. Of course, Pete Carroll and Andy Reid, all of these guys, live up to that huge name for the head coaching of their teams, and the Chargers are no different with Jim Harbaugh. So today we're going to do something kind of fun. We're going to give position grades for each team in the AFC West, considering it's going to be a tough one, man. A tough division, a tough, place to win, and ultimately, whoever makes it out of this division has a pretty good chance of making it far in the postseason. So let's go ahead and grade the AFC West in this race for the division. Before we do kick things off, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Newcomers take advantage of the offer on screen. It's a great way to support my platform while having some fun along the way. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Race for the AFC West. Position grades for the division. We got a lot of work to do this year, man. The Chargers, yes, trying to build a roster, trying to build a team to be competitive. But ultimately, you got to make it out of your home division first, man. It's a tough one out here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have some fun with this. I'm going to go ahead and grade each position or each whatever for, starting with the head coach, for each team in the AFC West, kind of on the fly. I want to jot them down here on my notebook as we go along to kind of see how each team holds up against one another at the end here. And ultimately, it does give us a good perspective as to how difficult it's going to be competing in this division, but why the Chargers also have as good a shot as anybody to make it out of this division with maybe even double-digit wins and a really nice look at a postseason run. Let's start off with the head coaching, okay? And ultimately, this is what everybody's been talking about. This is why the AFC West is such a cruel place to live this season. Starting off with Jim Harbaugh on the right, the Chargers. Of course, I'm going to give this hiring an A+. You know what? If you don't like it, you shouldn't have come to a Chargers-centered YouTube channel. But Jim Harbaugh has been exactly what this team has needed, a shift in the direction of identity, of organization, and ultimately of competitiveness. This is now a competitive, competent football team, and for the longest time, I can tell you as a Chargers fan, we have not had that. And it's really nice to finally see all the pieces come together under competent leadership. And really, it's a refreshing existence for Chargers fans with Jim Harbaugh now at the helm. The Broncos. I'm going to go ahead and give this hiring also. And again, this is why this division is so tough, man. I'm going to give them we got to be a little harsh at some point, right? We're going to say, still an A-. I can't dock it too much. The Broncos were also kind of facing identity crisis post the Peyton Manning era, post their, Super Bowl relevancy at that point, and they really had no direction for the longest time. And Sean Payton came in with some ideas that are going to be very reminiscent throughout this division outside of the Chiefs. We want to be a tough football team. We want to run the football. We want to build in the trenches. It's what the Chargers are doing, the Broncos are doing, and now, of course, what the Raiders are doing with Pete Carroll. It's tough to dock that hiring, man. He's been awesome. I would say A-. just because there were, some ups and downs of getting things started. The Chargers certainly hit the ground running a little bit faster, but, Sean Payton's taken that franchise in a good direction. Andy Reid, of course, is going to get that A+. He's won multiple Super Bowls there. He's got Patrick Mahomes in this team, every single season as a top team in the NFL. Not much more to say there. And then Pete Carroll, we're going to go ahead and give him the lowest grade, but it's still a good grade in the AFC West of a B+. There's some reasons behind them moving on from him in Seattle, a few seasons back. He didn't coach last year. Now he's coming in with the Raiders, with some good concepts and some good ideas to build towards the future. I think ultimately they're off to a pretty good start. B+ for Pete Carroll, which again, like a lot of what we said with Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton, they're building a very familiar identity to, we'll say, the AFC North, right? The Ravens, the Browns, the Steelers. It's going to be a very tough run-oriented football division at this point. And this is why ultimately the division's getting so much attention. That is a stacked roster of head coaches, and it's only going to get crazier as we go along. Now let's take a look at the most important position on the roster. In terms of players, the quarterback. Unfortunately, the Chargers, who we're going to start with on the right side, are on the right side of competent quarterback play. We're going to give Justin Herbert a grade of an A. I would be very hard-pressed to find anybody on this channel pushing the other direction. Of course, I can be a bit generous, but we're going to get to other positions that are going to be a little bit more controversial for Chargers fans. Either way, Justin Herbert, one of the best in the NFL, one of the best arms in the NFL, and really when he gets going, he looks like maybe a top 3 quarterback in football. He's got all the tools. I think in year 2 of Jim Harbaugh, you're going to see a lot of the success come out of Jim Harbaugh's familiarity in the new offense and consistency in his play under Jim Harbaugh. At quarterback for the Broncos, we got Bo Nix, who's off to, again, a really, really good start with Sean Payton. A lot of people maybe wrote him off in his draft a few seasons ago. I was one of the guys, and of course, you see number 10 out of Oregon, you got to think twice as a Chargers fan. And we did think there was some potential for him to pop off with the Broncos. Of course, he is starting to show evidence of that. I'm going to give him a grade of a B so far. I think that he's off to a really good start. I think, honestly, his offensive line has helped him a lot in the last season, and he's still got room to grow, but that's good for Broncos fans, man. I think that he's going to end up being a solid quarterback for them going forward and ultimately could honestly have the ceiling to develop into a pretty nice quarterback in the AFC West going forward. Next up is Patrick Mahomes, who of course is going to get the A+ treatment. You could give, a case of him coming down to A-. He has, or I should say A, a 1- grade overall, because he has maybe slid a little bit in his last couple of seasons. Not the same Patrick Mahomes from 3 or 4 years ago where he was just lighting the league on fire, ridiculous stats, et cetera, but he still is the game-winning quarterback. He's been their ace in the hole for many years now. There's not much evidence to suggest that he's going to fall that far from grace. We do see a little bit, of regression happening, but not enough for me to take away the A+. Best quarterback in the league outside of maybe Josh Allen, A+ grade. And then finally, we got Geno Smith of the Raiders, who I'm going to give a grade of a C+. Some people may scoff at that. We had Geno Smith on the Chargers for a while. We understood his journey back to, being a starter with the Seattle Seahawks. He's a competent quarterback, and ultimately the best quarterback they've had at the position in a long time for the Raiders. It's been a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of experiments, a lot of ups and downs. A lot of QB2, Garoppolo and O'Connell and all these guys. I think Geno Smith is finally the most consistent quarterback they're going to have on the roster. I think he's being put in a good position, and considering what kind of offense, Pete Carroll and them are going to be wanting to run. And I don't know if you need much more than a C+ to compete. Maybe in the division it's going to make it a bit tough for not having a B or an A tier quarterback, but he's definitely better than what they've had. We'll have to see what they do with him. And it's ultimately a good stop-gap quarterback for them as they look for their quarterback of the future. Let's move on to running back. Man, this is going to be where the AFC West starts to transform into that team fantasy players are paying attention to, and offensive, centric people look towards. It's this run division that all of a sudden is coming out of nowhere, because you can take a look at all these teams and think, wow, these are high, volume passing teams in the past. Of course, the Chargers and Phillip Rivers, Peyton Manning and the Broncos, recently Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and whoever with the Raiders for the longest time. Now this whole division feels like it's leaning towards the run outside of the Chiefs, and there's some really good running backs throughout this division that's going to make it a lot of fun. Starting off at the top with the Chargers, Omari and Hampton. You guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm already going to give him a grade of an A, man. This guy, you can ask anybody. I have been hyping up Omari and Hampton since the very tippity top of the offseason. He's been one of my absolute favorite picks for the Chargers. When it ended up happening, we lost our minds live on stream. And I do think he's going to pan out to be one of the best running backs in football at some point. Maybe an A grade is generous for a rookie, but that's how much I believe in Omari and Hampton, and being put in a situation where, man, dude, he's got all the tools to thrive here. He's got the Jim Harbaugh, offense. He's got the offensive line to work with, which is much better than UNC was providing him. I really think you're going to see a special season from Omari and Hampton, and he's going to provide some awesome value for this football team on offense. Next up, RJ Harvey, another running back that I absolutely loved coming into the draft. Very, very special draft of running back, and it's going to show. The Broncos are thinking a lot of the same things that the Chargers are thinking. They want to start running the football. They've got a great offensive line all of a sudden. And I do think that RJ Harvey is going to succeed here. I'm going to give him a grade of a B to start things off. Of course, we did see some concern with Javonte Williams in their run game last season, even considering the really good offensive line play. But I think RJ Harvey is an individual talent that can carry him, to that next level that they've been looking for. And ultimately, he's a guy that we were very high on, too, in the draft. And I think he landed in a really good spot to succeed. Next up, Isaiah Pacheco. We're going to give him the benefit as the veteran option on this list, which is crazy. Pacheco feels like he just got here, someone who's been watching football a few years now. And he's the most established, right? He's definitely what they've been looking for in terms of play from the running back position. It's kind of weird for the Chiefs. They want a guy that can catch, a guy that can kind of run. Pacheco kind of checks a lot of boxes for him. He's not like an elite running back or anything, but he's definitely very established. I'm going to give him a B+. He works in their offense, and he's a proven commodity in the NFL. And then finally, Ashton Jeanty. You guys are going to think I'm crazy again. I got to give it I can't give it an A+ yet because he's still a rookie. Maybe I'll take a grade down for Omarion, so I'll bring him down to an A-, and I'll bring Ashton Jeanty to an A, because ultimately we have to give Ashton Jeanty a slight edge versus Omari and Hampton, just considering, the kind of talent he was in college, one of the best running backs we've seen in a long time, and I really think it's going to be tough for him not to succeed in the league, considering how good of an individual talent he is. So Ashton Jeanty, we all were pumping him up all offseason. I hate that he landed with the Raiders, but that's going to create a very awesome rivalry at the position between the Chargers and the Raiders specifically. Both these guys coming from the same division, just give me the same draft class. They're going to be followed along the same lines, as Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow and these guys that, they came from the same class, a very special class for their position. I think it's going to be one very fun to follow. So Ashton Jeanty, Omari and Hampton, I think you're looking at two of the best running backs in the league over the next 3 or 4 years, and maybe even sooner than that, man. I think both these guys could have very special rookie seasons. All right, let's get it moving a little bit quicker here, man. Wide receiver, we got the Chargers starting off on the right side with Ladd McConkey and Trey Harris. Of course, you got other guys, Quentin Johnson, Mike Williams making their way back. I'm going to go ahead and give this position grade for the Chargers a B-. I think we have maybe the best wide receiver one in the division. Ladd McConkey is very special. Of course, you can make a case for some of these other guys, but wide receiver isn't the most, stacked position in the division for any of these AFC West teams. But the Chargers most certainly can say they have a wide receiver one at Ladd McConkey. And if it were last season's roster, I would probably give it like a C-, a C, with mainly Ladd McConkey floating the top part of that grade. But we did bring in some help: Trey Harris, Mike Williams, some people very excited about Keandre Lambert-Smith, who I'm also very excited to see. I think we have some hope now. So I think B- feels very fair this season. Now moving on to the Broncos with Courtland Sutton and Marvin Mims. Again, Courtland Sutton, you can say wide receiver 1 for the Broncos. He is very good, and I think, we know what he is, though. He's got, a nice ceiling, a decent floor, but, I think Ladd McConkey is going to end up topping him very, very soon. Still, I'm going to give the Broncos a grade of a B- as well. I do think they have some nice pieces to work with. I think the Chargers and Broncos can be kind of similar. I would say Ladd McConkey has the higher ceiling, but Courtland Sutton has the higher floor right now just because he's more established. Kind of feels right for me. Broncos and Chargers start things off. The Chiefs up next with Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. I'm going to go ahead and give them a grade of a C+. Let's do C+. Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, both individually pretty good talents. I think they've got some individually good receivers. They also got Hollywood Brown there, right, too. It's not the best situation Patrick Mahomes has been able to make do, especially with his tight end play over the past few seasons, but I do think that it's a familiar story in Kansas City. They need to get help there at wide receiver. Then finally, the Raiders with Jacoby Myers and Jack Bech. I'm going to give them a grade of a C. Jack Bech, very high on. I think he can end up being a pretty good wide receiver in the league. But Jacoby Myers being your number 1, although he did have a decent season last year, is definitely one of the weaker points in the Raiders roster. So I would say, between the Chargers and the Broncos, those are probably your 2 best rosters of wide receiver, but not the strongest position in the division at all. It is a strong position, though, tight end. Starting with the Chargers on the right side, Tyler Conklin, we're going to go ahead and give him a grade of a C. Again, I think it's a better situation than last year. I think Hayden Hurst was definitely in like the D- territory. Some potential there, but ultimately, it just did not pan out. Will Dissly ended up probably being more like a C or C+ for this team. I may actually even bump it up one more, C+ for Tyler Conklin, because I do believe that Conklin is going to be one of the more stable tight ends that we've had in a while in Los Angeles. He's a very reliable, sure-handed guy. He's got decent understanding of route running, of even blocking. I think he's going to be overall a very nice option for the Chargers, kind of reminiscent of what we had in terms of stability, like Jared Cook and Gerald Everett. Like it could be just fine for what we need this year while we're continuing to look for the guy of the future or develop the guy of the future in Oronde Gadsden. Next up, the Broncos. We're going to go ahead and give them a B- on this one. I do like Evan Ingram, the signing. It was a guy that we were kind of hoping to get for the Chargers. Matter of fact, I'm going to bump it up to a B+. That's not, when you're taking a look at the environment of tight ends in the league, it's hard to get a pretty, involved one in the offense nowadays. And I think Evan Ingram has proven that he's a good receiver, and he's going to fit very well with Bo Nix and those guys in the Broncos offense. Travis Kelce, I want to give him an A- really bad, but he just has not looked the same. Do I still do it? I think I'm going to go B+ here, dudes. I think, is it crazy to think of Evan Ingram and Travis Kelce closer to the same, playing field? I don't know if it's as crazy anymore. I think Travis Kelce's still a really good tight end, has definitely slowed down a lot, which is going to definitely open up some opportunity here. You can even say he's down to a B- at this point, but I do like both of these guys. I almost want to bring them both down to a B, but let's stop second-guessing ourselves here for a second while we go into Brock Bowers, who's definitely, again, one of the few you're going to find on this list. He's an A+. He came out the gates his rookie season as the best tight end in football. He put up wide receiver 1 numbers, and I think he's going to continue doing that, especially with better quarterback play in Geno Smith this season. He's going to be one of those weapons to watch out for, and why it doesn't matter so much for the Raiders not to have that, higher grade at wide receiver. They got Brock Bowers, and he's going to be just fine for them going forward. Next up, offensive line. This one's tricky. I'm not like the biggest guru in all the other AFC West teams. I can tell you everything about the Chargers. But looking inside and outside of the offensive lines of the rest of the AFC West, I did come to a few conclusions. Let's go ahead and start with the Chargers, who I'm going to give a grade of, we become more critical here, I think we do, a B+. Now, that's crazy to think that you got bookend tackles in Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, and you're not getting into that A grade. It's because there's still some question marks, some pretty big ones in the interior. Very excited for Mekhi Becton. I think he's going to provide some awesome opportunities in the run game for Amari and Hampton. But big question marks behind center and left guard. Leaves me a little bit concerned about what the rest of that line is going to look like. But the Chargers, a B+ is still a very, very solid grade for this unit. Next up, the Denver Broncos with Garrett Bowles and Mike McGlinchey. We're going to give them a grade of an A. I think the Broncos ended up having one of the best offensive lines in football last year. You can definitely say that was a huge part in Bo Nix's rookie season being a success, and I do think that they have some nice pieces there that have ultimately led them to a lot of success on offense, and it really is part of that identity building of Sean Payton that they've had for a few seasons. Now, the Chiefs, we're going to give the Chiefs a grade of a C+. They have a few really good pieces in Creed Humphrey and like Trey Smith, but outside of that, man, they got absolutely exposed in the Super Bowl. You could even say it could be like a B-. I think that also might be fair, but man, they did lose some pieces this year too. And that is definitely going to come into play later, as they may have found some replacements through the draft, but there's some questions about availability. There's rookie concerns. I think the Chiefs' offensive line may end up being a point of weakness for other teams to attack this season. And then finally, the Raiders, Colton Miller, Jackson Powers-Johnson, probably two there, but Colton Miller is not bad. JPJ, kind of still a question to be answered, but the rest of that line does not look good. I'm going to go ahead and give the Raiders a grade of a C-, maybe even D. We'll go D+ for now. They have some work to do. Yes, they made some signings. I have to wait and see how that kind of shakes out. But they were definitely not great last season, and that's probably one of the reasons why you're going to see a closer race between Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton this season. Omarion Hampton's being put in a pretty decent position in terms of offensive line and scheme play. That's already had a season under its belt behind Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. The Raiders, Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, this definitely not as good offensive line. It's gonna, be a handicap against Ashton Jeanty, and it might even the playing field a little bit between those two rookie running backs this season. Let's move on to the defense real quick. Defensive side of the football, we'll go kind of a little faster here as we're getting, to the 20-minute mark. Defensive line, this is where the Chargers are going to struggle a little bit, as we are not as well established as the rest of the division. This is going to definitely be the one grade that Chargers fans go a little bit at. But we do have some nice players with some decent upside. Teair Tart, I think there's a chance he can create another Poona Ford narrative for this team, where it's like, hey, he's decent. We need him for a season, and wow, he pops, right? I think there's a very decent shot of that. He was definitely good in rotation last year. And then Tito Ogbonia, definitely a lot of new faces in there. You got Caldwell, you got Hand, but we really don't know what this position is going to look like yet for the Chargers. So I'm going to go ahead and give them a grade of a D+ on the interior defensive line. I want to say C- really bad because I like Teair Tart, I like the upside of all these guys. We just have not seen it yet. That definitely is a little bit concerning. So we'll see how that shakes out for the Bolts. On the other hand, the Denver Broncos, DJ Jones, Zach Allen. Man, Zach Allen had some crazy sacks last season. The whole defensive line of the Broncos was fantastic. DJ Jones is also a really good player. Man, this is going to be tough, dude. I'm going to give them a grade of an A. That is a tough interior defensive line that the Broncos got going on there, and they're probably even better when it comes to edge here in just a second. The Chiefs with Chris Jones and Mike Pennell. We're going to give them a grade of a B+. I remember thinking that Chris Jones slowed down a little bit, but he's still Chris Jones. Pennell is whoever. That's still a pretty, Chris Jones is going to float that grade quite a bit. And then finally the Raiders, we're going to give them a grade of an A off the bat here with Christian Wilkins and Adam Butler. Wilkins, again, we haven't seen his full potential. I think he got hurt pretty early, right? But man, was he a beast with the Miami Dolphins. He's in a really good position to play alongside of Max Crosby and all those guys. It's kind of a scarier interior defensive line outside of the Chargers in this division, which is why we're going to hope to see some emphasis on the position going forward. And maybe some nice Chargers style surprises this year. With like, hey, we weren't quite sure what to expect of this guy, but man, did he pop with the team at some point. Next up, edge, where the Chargers do have a very nice concoction of players. We got Khalil Mack, Tooley. We got Kyle Kennard in there now with Bud Dupree. Nice rotation, right? But ultimately, the top two guys, what we're going to look at in Khalil and Tooley. One of the better situations at edge this season. The only concern is Khalil Mack getting a little up there in age, still producing at a pretty decent level. I'm going to give them a grade of a B+. Want to see what Tooley can do when given those starter reps. I think they're going to be great, though, man. I think, honestly, by end of the season, you're going to see this unit or this duo closer to an A-. But I'm very excited to see those guys get to work. Next up, the Broncos with Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. These were two of the best guys in terms of sacks last year. I think they both logged double-digit sacks. The Broncos logged the most sacks in the NFL. That's going to warrant at least an A- grade, even though a lot of these guys were kind of considered, sleepers. You don't really think of Nick Bonito. You don't really think of Jonathan Cooper when it comes to edge guys, but they produced. So we're going to go ahead and give them the grade of an A-. Next up, the Chiefs, George Karlaftis and Mike Dana. They did their jobs. They're not considerably bad, but they're not also good. The Chiefs weren't really known for their pass rush. They're going to get a grade of a C+. And then finally, the Raiders with Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz, who we didn't get to see a lot of last year. He's also an exceptional talent. Logged 8 sacks before going down early in the season. I was just saying, logged 8 sacks in 23. He went down early in 24, and it's something that we were worried about last year that we're probably going to have a good sample size of this year. Kuntz and Wilkins, these guys coming together with Max Crosby. The Raiders are secretly one of the better defensive line units in the NFL, and we got to watch out for them. They're going to get a grade of an A, of course. Max Crosby, one of the best edge defenders in football. Next up, linebacker. Some interesting narratives here. Chargers with Dan Henley, Jr. Colson. I think we're in a pretty good position. Dan Henley turned out to be one of the better linebackers in football. I think Jr. Colson's going to end up being a pretty nice linebacker at some point too. We're going to give them a grade of a B. I feel pretty good about that. I think the ceiling is nice and high too, depending on how Junior Colson, follows up in his second season. The Broncos with Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw, we're going to give them a grade of a B+. Singleton, great numbers last season. I think that he's going to end up being another one of those guys to watch out for in the West. The Chiefs, surprisingly, probably with the best grade at the position with Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil. Both those guys have been insane. They've logged crazy numbers individually for the last few seasons. They're going to get a grade of an A. And then finally, the Raiders with Elandon Roberts and Devin White being the top two guys. Oh, man, I can't even tell. They lost Spillane, right? They lost some guys this season. They didn't really do much in terms of replacing. We don't know what's going to look like with Pete Carroll and those dudes, but I might be the only one on the list. I'm going to give him a grade of an F. I have no idea what to expect from these guys. I don't think Elandon Roberts, what was he before? He was obviously a Steeler and a Patriot, and just Devin White ended up kind of being a bust too. I don't know what their plan is there at linebacker, but it doesn't look good for the Raiders over the middle. At DBs, more specifically cornerback, we got the Chargers with Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, two second-year guys who's definitely had a really, really nice rookie outing. We're going to give that a grade of a C+. Still some more work to do. I like some of the signings like Dante Jackson. But there's still some unknowns out there. But I don't know if the Chargers need much more than a C+ to be that team. Of course, we've seen Jesse Minter work with a lot less. And I do think that Tarheeb and Cam are on their way to being a nice duo for this team going forward. The Broncos, however, ridiculous. Pat Surtain and Jahdae Barron. I don't know who their cornerback 2 is. Moss or something, right? But that is a ridiculous tandem. Surtain on the outside, Barron kind of patrolling pretty much wherever they need him. One of the highest graded rookies coming into the season. That's at least an A right there, if not an A+, considering Pat Surtain in a lot of people's eyes is the best corner in football. You could make a K. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to say A+ for Pat Surtain and the Broncos. That's a crazy duo they got going on over there. The Chiefs, the Trent McDuffie and Christian Fulton. McDuffie's been great, right? He was one of my favorite players coming into his draft too. Christian Fulton, of course, had a decent season with the Chargers last year. I saw a lot of people crapping on him in my last video. Obviously, he wasn't a top tier, cornerback in the NFL, but he certainly was not a terrible cornerback too. Maybe did fall off a little bit, later in the season, but he had some pretty good games considering how much of a bust he was with the Titans. He's not terrible, so we got to watch out for that when we play against him versus the Chiefs this year. I'm going to give him a grade of a B-. I think that's pretty fair. I like Trent McDuffie a lot, but outside of him, not quite sure what they have in terms of play from the cornerback position. Then finally, the Raiders with Eric Stokes and Jacorian Bennett. I don't even know this Bennett guy. Stokes, I know, is big and fast, but he had some problems in Green Bay. I got to give this like a D+. We'll give him a D+. I like Eric Stokes a little bit. He'll float the grade a little bit, but man, the Raiders, in terms of linebacker and corner, there's some things to expose there, which is why they're probably going to end up being at the bottom of the AFC West again. Finally, safety. We got, of course, Derwin James, Alohi Gilman at the top. We're going to give that, of course, a grade of an A just to start things off. I think that's a pretty easy one for us. Derwin James, one of the best safeties in football, one of the most involved defensive players in football. Alohi's great. We just find some great depth on the team as well. I feel pretty good about it, and I think it's going to end up being one of the stronger positions on this team by season's end. The Broncos with Brandon Jones. This is one of the trickier spots for the Broncos too. They got Brandon Jones and Talanoa Hufanga, who can be a very good player. He was a good player with the Niners a few seasons ago, but I think he ended up getting hurt last year. Brandon Jones, don't know too much about him. I'm going to go ahead and give them a grade of a C. I think a C is pretty fair, right? We'll go C. I think there's some potential there. I like Hufanga if he can stay healthy. But definitely, you know, when you're talking about a defense that has Jay Barron, they may end up playing him, up high a little bit more than you think, just because of, the lack of talent they might have at the safety position. The Chiefs with Brian Cook and Jaden Hicks, they ended up losing Justin Reed, right? Justin Reed no longer on the team. That's going to hurt. He is one of their best players. I don't know much about Hooks. Jaden Hicks a little bit. We're going to go ahead and give them a grade of a C-. I think the Chiefs definitely have one weakness in that safety position. Dude, this is why I want to see players like Keandre Lambert-Smith and even Trey Harris attack that deep part of the field against the the Broncos too, and the Chiefs. Their safety position is definitely leaves room to be desired. And then finally, the Raiders with Isaiah Polamau and Jeremy Chin, two decent DBs, I would say. Both of them are decent. Nothing crazy, but they're solid. I'll give them a grade of, we'll say a C+ for the Raiders. But certainly a position that's all of a sudden you're looking at the Chargers. Hey, man, that might be, deep part of the field. That might be what we want to start trying to utilize in our game plan, because that could be something. Get some speed out there, get Justin Herbert's big arm on display, and see if we can expose maybe a overall weakness in the AFC West outside of the Chargers, who of course have Derwin and Alohi. And to wrap up the video, finally, I don't want to leave them out. We got the special teams. Just with some kicker action here. Cameron Dicker, we'll give him a grade of an A-, one of the best kickers in football. Will Lutz is not bad. We'll give him a B-. Harrison Butker is one of the better ones, B+. And Daniel Carson also B+. All these teams have decent special teams play, I would say. Couldn't tell you more than that outside of the Chargers, who are certainly not a bad unit there. But Cameron Dicker, definitely worthy of a graphic for this video. All right? Well, what do you guys think, man? And kind of looking around, some of the grades that I put down here, that was one of them. I think safety, interestingly enough, caught my attention. That is a way to wedge yourself into the AFC West. And there's weaknesses all over, man. Like, we take a look at some of the featured weaknesses, like the F grade that we handed the Raiders at linebacker. That'll be one to attack there. The Chiefs, maybe, they don't have as much in terms of edge play. Their offensive line could be something the Chargers take advantage of. There's a lot to look at here. So if you guys would take a look in the comments and maybe leave some good ways you think that we can attack the rest of the AFC West to help the Chargers find success here in this really difficult division, please let us know. I think it's really fun to kind of dissect and see what our chances are going into it. And ultimately, I think in my last schedule, or I should say record prediction video, I had the Chargers splitting with the Chiefs, splitting with the Broncos, and then sweeping the Raiders, putting us at 4 wins in the division for this season, which I think would be very fair considering how well the division has shaked out in the last couple of years. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. I'm telling you guys, Omari and Hampton versus Dash and Genty, that's going to be the storyline of the future going forward. Great tandem, dude. They're going to be, it's a great rivalry. They're going to be two of the big boys of fantasy football, too.